This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dong. Episode, God knows whatever it is because it's too hot to even think. Hello,
Yeah, dog
Tim.
dog days, and
I love Dog Day Afternoon, the film, but I don't like living in the dog days.
well, the real Dog Day Afternoon story happened down the street from where I live
It
now. It was like
did.
Avenue P, and I don't
Yeah.
know, yeah, whatever. But
I wish
yeah,
the real Al Pacino story happened down the street from me, but probably that was a long time ago. Anyway, speaking of weirdos,
yep.
not that he's to be believed about much of anything, but the disgraced New York Congressman George Santos says executives at the popular gay dating app Grinder are calling the Republican National Convention the Grinder Super Bowl.
I mean, sure.
Amid, well, supposedly Grinder even tapped out. I mean, it was just overloaded. And so, although, Santos, what can we believe? But Grinder executives are calling it the Grinder Super Bowl. Now, the website tracker Down Detector reported that Grinder had experienced a significant spike in outages in the 24 hours since the convention, with a
Oh
map
my
that
god.
might locate Milwaukee as one of the main places that there's too much going on. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
I believe it.
Republican hypocrites with their sex
Oh God,
behavior versus what they tell people
so
what they can and
ridiculous.
cannot do. It's
So
consistent. Let's put it that
so
way.
ridiculous.
Um, well, I don't know if this guy was on Grinder, but he died. Richard Simmons,
Uh,
who died um, the same day that Trump was shot, and I'm just bummed out that Richard Simmons kind of got overshadowed with that news. But I
well,
guess
that's
he fell. He felt dizzy. He probably wasn't eating enough. He felt dizzy and he slipped and hit his head in the bathroom.
oh
And it was like his birthday or something. And basically his maid or whatever is like, "Oh, you should go to the hospital." He's like, "No, no, I'm fine. It's okay."
ah
And then went took a nap and never woke up.
oh shit.
Yeah,
Well, let's just put it this way.
sure.
I'm the opposite of anti-abortion. I'm pro no birthing. I don't even know what to call that. I think there are too many people. I think procreation is vanity. And now this is just something to back me up that 95% of baby formulas tested in America have heavy metals, lead,
Oh yeah,
cadmium, neurotoxins, and then you wonder why there's an uprise. Now, is it the reporting or not in autism and ADHD? And the worst offenders, of course, are
Nestle,
Gerber,
Nestle.
Plum Organics, Beechnut, etc. In other words, as usual, it's all the big companies that don't give a shit about anything that, and oh, rice, sweet potatoes, juice, all of them. Absolutely toxic. Organic isn't always the answer because a lot of organic companies have been taken over by big brand name corporate klepto genocidal maniacs.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, the thing about the baby formula, it's interesting because I was talking with Sam Oswald a lot about this. One of the most important food sources on this planet is a woman's breast milk. It feeds billions of people, and for a corporation to basically hijack and be this weird middleman in that, and I, you know who, Nestle is one of the biggest lobbyists in D.C. to make sure paternity leave stays short. So a lot of that has to do with women forcing people to go back to the workplace and not properly, raise the
feed the
child.
baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all so fucked. I mean, and then there's sugar in a lot of that stuff too. So kids are addicted before they can even make a choice. They're addicted to sugar.
Well, look, and if now there's microplastics in penises, I fear what's in the fetus. So right now is not the time
Yeah,
to procreate. It is the time to be very conscious of all the devastation that is surrounding us and trying to find a peaceful way. Speaking about peaceful,
sure.
I don't know if you could take this, Tim. I know that I could. What about the quietest room in the world?
Well, I keep on reading about these things, or they
Well, this one is made by Microsoft, so who trusts them for anything? But the most anybody has managed to stay inside this sound isolation chamber is 55 minutes. Now, to me, it kind of sounds like heaven because I have so many sounds already in my ears and head that
Well,
it would
probably
be
it
nice.
creeps
I
people out.
doubt they'd be cut out.
It creeps people out. I mean,
But speaking to
you don't even know if you're
CNN,
alive. You don't even know what's going on.
well, I mean, that might be a good place to get in touch with yourself. The
Maybe.
longest continuous time anyone has ever spent is 55 minutes. Now, Steve Orfeld has it's called an anechoic chamber at Orfield Laboratories in Minnesota. He said that it takes a lot of time for your body to adapt to the silent environment because you start hearing your heart beating, you can hear your lungs, your stomach gurgling, and then it's there's no eternal sounds to drown this out. If you're in there for an hour, you have to be in a chair.
So is it a series
Explain that. Well, first of all, the chamber is composed of 6 layers of concrete and steel, which insulates it. And then within it, there is an extreme amount of acoustic insulation to absorb 99.99% of echoes within the room. I mean, I've already spoken about Tres, the Spanish artist who conducted silence, which I thought was such a good experiment. It's just amazing because we're even when you think it's quiet, we're so bombarded with sounds
That's insane.
from without, and then we have tinnitus, we have the voices in our heads, we have whatever else is going on. And I think I would. I'd like to try my. I'd like to try my time.
Not for me. I mean, is that So it's just filters. There's not like any counter waves to kind of cancel out sound waves coming towards it.
Well,
I mean,
it's used to research new audio technology. So they're measuring, the components in different, for instance, Xboxes for noise. And I mean, I wish they'd measure my air conditioner for noise, but yeah. I mean, I think it would be a good test. I think it would be a good challenge.
Yeah.
Probably a fear challenge.
Count me out.
I mean, what is it? The
I like noises.
Hardest thing to do for most people is sit alone quietly in a room. I have no problem.
Well, okay.
I have a harder time just being in a club with loud music I can't stand than sitting alone in silence.
That's something else. Yes. There was a teenager in Mission Beach, San Diego, which I used to go to as a kid sometimes. Basically was walking the beach. This happened earlier this year, but fortunately this person's still alive. Basically a hole in the sand, sunk in 8 feet, took 20 minutes to get her out. She's lucky she's alive.
It's sucking people in. I mean, the earth is revolting against those that are revolting.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Well, speak about revolting.
Sure.
I don't know if you've heard about this, but I love the title, Donald Trump is a Clown, according to clowns. So, Milwaukee, of course, just outside the security perimeter of the Republican National Convention across the river from where, of course, thousands are gathered to hear a pathological liar tell more lies and his racist, misogynist ass suckers to also parrot him. There were clowns honking horns, displaying their homemade clown cart featuring circus music, paper mache heads of Trump adorned with a red tie. Their quote is, "The Republican Party is a clown act, so why not just play to that," said, I like this guy, said Steve May from Washington State, one of the clowns. They even have a anti-Trump clown website. Their quote is, "We are democracy-loving Americans dressed as clowns to encourage you to join in us keeping clowns and puppets out of elected offices of the United States." I think it's a very good idea, but it might be too late. How are we going to get them out of office now? I mean, look, it's been tried and it failed.
Yeah, this is none of it's looking good.
It's not looking good.
No, and
it's not looking good.
I'm more and yeah. Let's see what happens.
Very dangerous time.
Yeah.
Very. I mean, I can't even go any further into it because I already have for fucking decades. I can't even say any more about how horrific all of this is at the moment. But then again, is it not the same as it ever was? Is this not history repeating itself? Is this not just another dictator trying to dominate with a supremely inflated ego? Well, maybe that's why he dodged a bullet. His head is so inflated. That has no respect or concern for either the planet or the people in it, who want to control women's bodies but don't want gun control, who do not give a shit for anybody's incredible tax problems except for those that have millions and billions of dollars. I mean, I just want to sing Bill Withers' "Oh Lovely Day" because it's very sarcastic. I'm just saying.
Well,
anyway, we're having our third
yeah.
heat wave in New York City, and most of the rest of the country is under it. I hear there was a tornado in Chicago. Well,
sure, that makes sense. I mean, usually,
and upstate.
Yeah, I mean, usually it doesn't hit the lake because it gets really cold there, but you can go in a mile in Chicago. Yeah, tornadoes.
What about that it snowed in Philadelphia on the hottest day of the year? Huge, giant snowballs of hail.
Oh, really? Okay. That's not snow, but yeah. Oh, wow.
Well, hail is good enough. I mean, it was snowball-sized hail, so I guess that's a snowflake times 1 million.
Hail Philly.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're always threatening a storm in Brooklyn. It never seems to come. Where is the thunder? Bring the thunder.
We had a little bit yesterday. We had a little bit, and it might be tonight. Whoa. Someone's going about.
Oh, what'd you see? Lightning?
No, there's an extreme subwoofer blaring in the car. It was like
anyway,
on the more extreme side. Let's put it that way.
Time has come today is all I can say. I wish it was. I wish time had come today. I've been listening to some of the speeches, which are inspiring my wrath at the Republican Clown Convention, and just the ass clownery of people that have been so insulted and insulted back. Now, kissing ass is so outrageously pathetic. It's really just driving a nail into the core of my being. But at the same time, I'm like, exactly. I mean, you're buying this shit.
Well, there was the first time ever the president of the Teamsters spoke at the Republican convention.
Well, and did you hear what bullshit came out of his freaking mouth?
Initially, but then he goes completely 180 for what the Republicans want. So he starts talking about like higher minimum wage. I mean, it made no sense. He was literally speaking.
This is a slave wage economy. $20 an hour is still $20 an hour is slave wage laborers. It's slave labor wages. You have how many millionaires in this country? I've lost count, who could actually make everything that is a problem go away tomorrow. And by the way, why not give every person in this country $1 million each and let them all just, have a good time? It ain't gonna happen. We're all gonna be 80%, maybe 90% of this country is gonna be suffering to pay next month's rent. We'll say 55%. They're going to be suffering in jail. They're going to be suffering at schools that are teaching Bible folklore. They're not going to be able to control their own bodies, and they're going to have to fear being shot in the freaking head by an incel, possibly Republican, the next time they go out of the house. The only good thing I've ever heard Biden say is control guns, not girls. As I like to say, abort the Supreme Court. Another farcical adventure we've had to put up with. This is ridiculous. Yeah. But again, America was founded on violence, and here we are again, and nothing has changed. You know what? All the good that happens, all the positivity, all the technological advancements does not improve the patriarchy's political mindset about what should be done to correct the problems we face. And that is exactly why we have the poet, activist, feminist, Anne Waldman to set us straight on some things. And that's why poetry, music, and art is still so important to the human soul. It is the salve to the universal wound. That is why we continue unpaid. We'll be milking you eventually, listeners. Thank you very much. After 263 or 4 free podcast. Send all donations. No, none are too small or too large. I'll put that up soon. Because art is important, and it is what saves us from the reality of the bullshit clown town affairs we are now having to live through. They all suck, except for us here on the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Ball. Thank you. This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl. I'm very excited to have maybe the most profound, prolific, activist, feminist, weird, multi-talented, multimedia artist of this or any century, Anne Waldman. I am so excited to have you. Your list of accomplishments is too great to even list here, but let's just start at what's happening now, and then we'll go backwards. You just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Voices at Naropa, which you started many decades ago with Allen Ginsberg and Diane DePrima. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was so amazing just to be there. I've been to every one, every summer.
Thrilled to be invited one year, I have to say. And one other weird fact is I know that when you moved to New York, you were living on McDougal Street, and that's the first place I ran away to. I wish I would have known you when I was 13.
Oh, we could have put you up.
I needed to be put up.
Got our own school there. Ambrose sends his love. My son, he lives in Mexico City. He keeps saying he wants to get you back.
Not only are you part of this incredible Beat generation and beyond family, because I do feel that your art is an immense extended family, but also your son Ambrose, who I was happy to record with at the Institute, that you have this, and your nephew Devin, which Tim also I believe knows, family organization that continues to understand the need for radical poetry.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I have to continue to do what I know a little bit what to do. And community is so important. Sanctuary is going to be important. The kind of work we do, it's got to be really smart and subtle and, you know, to the point. So we've got to just save our imaginations and consciousness.
Well, two of the most important, besides all the 60 books and the editing and the other things we're going to go into, is your work with Daniel Ellsberg, Stop the Nuclear Waste. And I love that you said it's a $250,000 project. We're fucked about that.
Well, no, we've got to pick things looking the long term. I asked one of my Buddhist teachers about the planet, you know, what are the divinations? And he said, well, there's a good chance a third of the world, after the nuclear stuff, the endless war, the endless climate change, I mean, all of that, there's something is going to continue in some form, and not just AI, handing it over to AI. So with that in mind and the bigger picture, I go back to the ancient wisdom, sometimes just these take a long view, as William Burroughs used to say, take a long, big view.
Well, I mean, in some things, as I always say, is it's the same as it ever was. When people say it's so terrible now, I'm like, what about the Middle Ages? What about the 1700s? What about the 1920s, 30s, 50s? There's a lot that's horrible. And but also, this is why poetry has to focus on not only the terror we have to resist, but the positivity of just being in the moment and being alive now.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah.
Extinction Rebellion, who we've also had a speaker on the podcast. Very important. There's so many important issues now. There always have been, but especially this week and every week for the past 8 years, I think.
Right. Absolutely. No, we're working on so many fronts, all of us, I think. And it's so important what we're leaving, how I work with my 4-year-old grandchild. I continue to work with, you know, younger people, just so hard during COVID. People were struggling, things so fractured and impossible, the gig to gig life, and just creating, you know, spaces for the work. And
it's interesting. It's interesting you bring this up, because I feel like one reason why, as we were kind of coming out of this pandemic experience, quote unquote, one reason it was so hard that people forget how much we depended on each other as a social species, and that we're sort of the people that were trying to just kind of jumpstart it again. We're all pulling a lot of dead weight because we kind of forget how much everyone springs off of each other, and how much everyone's participating and how much we're dependent and rely on that.
Well, especially when you're road dogs like the three of us. We're road dogs. We got to be out there. I mean, during the pandemic, we started the podcast.
Great.
I completed a film, Artist Depression, Anxiety, and Rage, because it's so important. I think the pandemic was a good lesson. To me, it reminded me of, like, this is how we felt when we were 12 and 13 years old, waiting for something to happen.
No, the kinetics of the network, it was so important. Our first, we called it Carrier Waves, our first Naropa summer on Zoom, and people were sort of frozen in their little, you know, niche boxes, like these little idols that you bring out from the secret inner temples, and just waiting to be activated. And I just start pushing, just asking it, speaking individually. And then at the end, trying to break it up so you can have this group session. And no, you have to figure out what the forms are, and working with telepathy, some of them, they would talk about, oh, I'm dreaming about you tonight. So fine.
Energy is what it's all about. That's what everything boils down to. Telepathy is just tapping in to a dimension of another form of energy.
There's so much alignment with what we know, you and I, what we've raised on, the kind of worlds, the music, the curiosity about the past. Not time is existing now. We're in now time, and all these things are syncretic, building on. So this, is it really worse than it was? I said, well, what about Vietnam?
Exactly. I mean, the thing is, the war is never over to me. This has been my bullhorn since Reagan. Right. So, madman maniacs for thousands and thousands of years. I mean,
it's this genetic thing. I think there's just more of them coming.
And I want to go back to what you were saying before about us understanding the past, because it is just variant levels of, once you understand that in our DNA is the history of everything, what we choose to focus on, and those of us that have a better understanding of what has come before and in the distant past, and we need to get back to the goddess and Kali and all of that. Thank you very much. Right. When is that turnaround coming, Anne? Oh, prophetess of poetry. Kali calling.
Well, I think, we're in the Kali Yuga. Supposedly it's just the beginning. It's going to get a lot harder and fierier before it gets better, and we're seeing it. And this was predicted by one of the teachers in the 80s. It's going to get very fascist in America. Think about your exit strategy, try to get a dual passport, create these other environments in other countries. You've traveled a lot. I mean, I'm seeking out.
I lived in Barcelona for 8 years when Bush stole the second election. It might be time to go somewhere else, wherever it's cooler, of course.
Mexico is where my family is. My grandchild, she's studying ballet and she's writing her poems. She has a great poem. The moon is very disappointed.
Nice. Let's just talk about that for a minute. Like, they want to colonize the moon and Mars when there's so much more that needs to be done on this planet.
Exactly. No, it's ridiculous. And they already have up there, the dark side of the moon. Who knows what's going on? It's all weaponry. It's weaponry, power, greed, who owns what. I tell everybody, get a little plot of land, grow a few things, take care of
soil, test the soil.
Yeah. No, all these things we've known forever. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
No, my great grandfather told my mother, my mother really looked up to him, that it's very important to own land, particularly on the border of another country, because he had come from Europe and he had seen some stuff. So yeah.
Have you done it?
Well, my mother did, the top of Maine, and it has a big massive waterbed there, so that exists.
Excellent. No, there was an idea to, we should just take Seize Vermont or some,
Vermont.
Start our own sanctuary place close to the border. Very good. Yeah.
When you go in, I'll go. The thing is, there's enough of us that are paying ridiculous amounts of rent to our artists, it's very difficult to get any kind of, help, especially for musicians. It's like, we have to have the art commune. It has to happen. I'm waiting. I'll be there. And Naropa is kind of like the summer artist community. It's kind of an artist commune. And let's go back to the origins of that. So let's first go back to, you're in your 20s, you're hanging out with Ginsberg. And by the way, Diana DePrima is the only one that published Herbert Huncke, one of my favorite characters in all of that period. And you decided, or did you, what was happening at St. Mark's Church before you
I was
director, and then then the director of the poetry project, which I think still goes on there.
Oh yeah, it's into its 60th year. I can still stand at the back and people come up and ask me how to get a reading. Will I give them a reading? I said, where have you been? This is time warp. Anyway, so yeah, went to Berkeley Poetry Conference for 65. And then came back. I'd already been around St. Mark's during, the films of Andy's films and the Sanctuary before it was the Poetry Project and the Millennium. and Theater Genesis. And so there was a social sociologist at the New School who wanted to do a study of alienated youth on the Lower East Side. He got a grant. He was at the New School. He got a grant from the Office of Economic Opportunity under Lyndon Johnson, and got a little funding. So, you know, we located it at St. Mark's, wanted to talk to everybody. There was money to buy books. There was money to buy film equipment. And we started just using the space in this very busy way, coming out of some of the cafes, the Metro and so on that had been around there. And I still had some time to another year of school, college. I was going to college out of the city. But I'd already started Angel Hair magazine with the poet Louis Warsh. We had met in Berkeley and had gone to Mexico. I was underage, so I had to have another identity, and just got very into what was going on in Berkeley. The Berkeley scene seemed so progressive, and grew up with these parents on McDougal Street. And my mother had lived in Greece a decade. She was married to the poet Sikelianos' son, Glafkos. My older brother was born in Greece. She went in 29, stayed till 39 before the war, got back, and then met my father, who had to go off to Germany, John Waldman. So it was all this Provincetown connection. And she was a dropout. John, my father, was swing piano player, and then he got drafted and so on. So there was this very interesting.
But right there, but one say right there, because dropout swing piano player, that kind of defines an interesting, thing to come out of, because in a sense, you didn't drop out. And you were swinging from the beginning with all the poetry and all of this. So that makes total sense to me, that that's part of your heritage. And also that your mother was also kind of nomadic.
Yeah, she's very involved with the project. Sometimes I felt I had to create it for her. It was like my what would be appealing. I wanted an intergenerational scene. I wanted it to be there for all kinds of people. But she, at the end of my father's life, he had worked at Pace University. He'd gone to school in the GI Bill after World War, coming back fighting the Nazis, and he worked at a methadone clinic on the Lower East Side when he retired. So, and she was very active with the poets. She put up people at the house, that kind of thing. Anyway,
did your father ever talk to you about the Vietnam War? Because all our grandparents and great grandparents, they went to war, but men didn't talk about war until I think the Vietnam War, and then they had to talk about it.
He was World War II, but he went on some bender. My mother was saying we were looking for him in the streets. He was not supposed to drink. He had shaped up with the war and all that. And he went on some bender about Vietnam, and he wanted to go fight with the Viet Cong, and we had off the street. And so anyway, yeah, they were both what do I want to say? Anarchists, this and that, coming from, a kind of a music scene. Leadbelly was it? I sat on Leadbelly's lap.
Whoa!
Can you believe it? I don't remember.
How old were you when you were sitting on Leadbelly there, honey?
He was. I should have just stayed there. He was like just never left McDougal Street when he showed up. Yeah, he was close to Pete Seeger and would come down and do some of those concerts that were on McDougal, Pete Seeger. So as a kid, a lot of the neighborhood kids were going to that stuff. No, I realized this later. It took a long time. What? What? What karmic luck?
Yeah. Did you know Bibi Hansen at the time?
No.
Because she was younger.
Yeah.
She's a good friend of ours. And,
really?
and also, I mean, an interesting life, and now has an 800-page memoir. Her first spoken word was Under My Cattle Prodding, which I'm proud to say. We've done a lot of shows since, and she's got the stories too. We'll talk about that some other time. She needs to come, and we've done workshops together. She's amazing and still really positive. And I think that's the thing people need to realize, both you and I mean, you deal with heavy subjects. I deal with heavy subjects. We deal with it in different ways. But at the end of it, no matter how heavy the subject matter is, we are still somehow optimistic and positive. I'm not to quote Kafka and say there is hope enough for us. That's my sarcasm. But, I mean, I come at it with a very more aggressive, not that you're subtle, because often you're very fierce. And that also we incorporate word with music, we're multimedia. It's so important to me, especially still, that we and others like us, not enough, more women, please step to the foreground, are out there telling the freaking truth. My new mantra is factism, not fascism.
Good. I like that. Very
I
smart.
like
Yeah.
it too.
Very good. Very good.
Very
No,
good.
it's like Diane's, the only war that matters is war against the imagination. And, you know, the way they're constructing this narrative, the master narrative, the history of our time, the history of what America is at this point, it is so loony. And I'm trying to see it as, you know, this constellation, the syncretic stuff, the karma, unresolved stuff around.
Coming of the end before the next phase.
Exactly.
But the thing is, you know, people have to realize this country being the hypocritical, non-democratic, lying, pathological, genocidal machine that it is, was founded on violence. And violence has solved everything. So why have we not gone beyond with all of the technology, with all of the advancements and everything? Why has the patriarchal political mind not advanced beyond war?
But isn't it part of the human experience? Isn't conflict? I mean, has there ever been a moment without conflict and violence? I'm not condoning it. I'm just
Maybe
saying,
when women were warriors and we had the ammunition before the men took over. I'm not sure. I'm just saying I have an only wish.
I think there have been interstices and, you know, communities and all kinds of, there's a lot of evidence of that. But the bigger picture, when you can really get into your passion, ignorance, and aggression, and it becomes this wheel, and it's just, you know, manufacturing. Then you have capitalism sort of dominating how to undo that. How to, you know, you can do it up to a point with your own communities and your own lifestyle and your family.
That's where every dollar goes, because most every dollar you spend is going into an enemy's pocket, especially when corporations.
All these weapons are made by everybody. Everybody's got their hand on the weapons.
Yeah, there's blood on every purchase. There's blood on every single purchase.
No, when Alan went to Israel first, he was able to go, he disappeared for a few days. He went over to Palestine. He got evidence of material that had made in the USA on it. And this was, you know, early before he died. I mean, even probably a while before he died, but just bringing the evidence of showing how this whole network works.
Peace is not profitable. War is big business. Hello, and here we are. How about a poem to lighten or elevate the mood?
Do we want to hear Extinction Aria?
Oh, I would.
A little bit of
anything you want.
Yeah, this is something I perform sometimes with Devin, and it's from Sayamiki, an album we did. So it's from, and it's just, let me say, it's based on the sort of realms, the Buddhist realms of the Preta, the hungry ghost realm, the animal realm, the human realm, and then you get to the warring god realm and the blissed out god realm. So this is just a bit from the human. So I'll do a little bit of this Extinction Aria.
Thank you.
If the human
for us, excuse me, Anne Waldman reading from one of her many very important poems. Thank you. Please begin.
Thank you. If the human is lying down, it is pretending. It isn't it. It is a she. It is not she. It is a thing, a they. It pretends and does not know what it is. It thinks I am this. The human is under the influence of humanness, of becoming human. It troubles, it waxes, it is atavistic. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. It does not want to wander anymore. It can't stop. Cybernetic capacity, a dance, but destroys as it wanders. It communicates. It is best at this in all the realms. It can talk, take risk. That's what it means to be human. And language is its ink. Is imperiled, not he, but something in between is desirous. Human wants to be between. It is complex. Oh, human, the contour of you is innocence. But because you make up things, you are dangerous, ever in incantation. You are aggregate, porous, ahistorical. Don't get it, ridding the world of all but you. Humble objects, what are they? Everywhere in the landscape, you notice, go be looking. That tree, which is an ash, sit down under the walking trees and want to have legs in ink and want to be my own portrait, a full portrait. Ink will tell it all, light and shade, nuance of the hidden, a bee in the ear of the human, the starling in the beak of the human. How talk to the wind and come to God. If the warmonger is inventing a battle cry, it is always he is ready to go and he thinks, I am a god. You will know this by an easy slogan. Words will be cheap. I am a god. You will know this by an easy slogan. It's simple words that are signaling assemblages that have power. And if the warmonger is insistent, he is surprising himself. Him, it is always him. He's then turning to the mirror of himself and worshiping himself, and then turns. He seems to trace an enemy. He needs to do this. He will. It is what he's doing. It's what he's doing. An imprint for the psyche, for the habit. This is the apparatus of becoming. Enemy is the creation of a warring God realm, of becoming embattled, isolated, and a kind of ghostly corporeality. The white ghost, the slaver, hunter of indigenous ones, knows no solitude. The karmic nightmare, scaffolding doom, brought nature inside and ripped its guts. No umbrage. The warrior, a sum total, but with Dorje and Purba brandishing power. Da 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 da. Good. I'm glad you're laughing.
Oh yeah, because,
Oh,
because the
joy.
tempo.
I love saying I am a god. I get thrills, you know.
Let's talk for a minute. That was great. Thank you. You were involved in the Rolling Thunder review. You and Ginsberg were hanging out with Dylan, Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell. How did that come about, and what was that like? How long did that go on for, bringing poetry and music to the people? I mean, that must have been an incredible period.
Well, it went on during the Rolling Thunder, the first tour, and so what is that, 76, 75? I have to think about where was I at. But I joined up at different times, and I was invited to participate in the movie, the Ronaldo and Clara, doing, you know, a little research, helping with ideas. I'm in the kind of brothel scene, which is up in Montreal, I guess, or in Quebec City up there. And so I don't know, I had some ideas about what to be and what to say. I have a line about my Buddhist thread, which protects me from ego. It's just silly, you know, silly things. It was very extempore. And then I had done this reading of fast speaking woman, and we were up at you know, where everybody goes to have their honeymoon under the water, and
Niagara Falls?
dressed up in Niagara Falls. So they had me dressed up as a Native American. It was so embarrassing and ridiculous, but they used the soundtrack from Fast Speaking Woman. I'm a this woman, I'm a that woman. And so in the film, it has Bob running around at one point, and you hear my voice kind of in his head. And then I'm, you know, in a couple of different scenes, but it was great to be kind of in the think tank of it with Alan. I mean, Alan really brought me along. I was working at Naropa. I had to come and go a few times. I had a couple of gigs outside, but I had something to do with the Hard Rain show in Colorado when, you know, I had everybody wearing their Joseph of Arimathea. I was wearing this kind of headdress thing that people like with a little cord, and it looked very old way back. We call it my Joseph of Arimathea headdress. So all the guys wanted to wear that. So I got a credit on the film, Headdresses by Anne Waldman Warsh.
One of your many credits. I mean, amazing.
You know, so it was like that. It was very family, very interesting. The Hard Rain, I went back and I said, Bob, let Alan read. He hadn't really let Alan read enough. And so Alan came out and very modestly read his beautiful poem for Neil Cassidy, All Ashes Again. So it was like that. Every day was full of all this incredible energy. I mean, at night, sometimes I just wanted to go and back to my room and talk to a few poet friends, you know, because of what, you know, the lifestyle, sometimes conversations, theses. I was really into thinking about it all in this very interesting way, this caravan moving through time and space with all this, you know, power, but also showing up extempore, you know, kind of involved. And Alan and I love to just talk to the audience, talk to people, see where everybody was coming from. So it was amazing. And that's, you know, recorded a little in that when they brought out the movie just recently, the Criterion version, I was able to do some, you know, they have my poem on the liner notes and things like that. And then Martin Scorsese did his, you know, sent people around to interview various people who had been on it. No, it was a great model for what we could be as communities. And it had, you know, a lot of influence.
Fantastic. How did you avoid, you know, there were a lot of exciting and problematic issues about the 60s, early 70s, especially in, I don't know where I read this quote about you, but about how many women you also saw who were like second class to their boyfriends, having to become prostitutes to buy the drugs, people becoming junkies. How did you avoid the pitfall of that in that
Well, I think I
period?
was a little younger than Bonnie, and Bonnie Bremser, of course, who was I mean, she writes about that in her interesting memoir. And some of the other sort of being under the wing. I mean, I was still on my own sort of path. I was in school. I stayed in school. And I had early, literary leanings doing this. I was doing the school magazine, the newspaper. It was very important to me to vocalize and
be focused and be focused.
Focus, yeah. And so by my 20s, I was already on this path, and performance too, because as a kid, I went to Greenwich House. I was in these, musical theater events from the age of like 6 on. I played Alice in Wonderland at Greenwich House. I knew Maria Muldaur. She was at Greenwich House as well, singing beautifully. I mean, I felt there was a whole generation I was coming up with. And depending where you are, it was incredible to be in New York because you had all these layers of activity and so many simultaneous things going on you didn't necessarily know about. And then when you looked at it all, you saw you were part of this, incredible renaissance, really. And liberating, just everything so liberating. But yeah, the cancel culture is hard. We call it in Naropa the dismissal culture.
Right.
I would never know if I was dismissed because I've been canceling a lot of things since I opened my mouth. But if we cancel us, how dare?
No, it's
the thing is, people. My problem is, don't be so freaking precious right now. I don't know how people became like. I don't know how they became so precious when there are so many greater issues than what somebody is saying, or what they really mean, or how they're presenting it, or what art is.
Right.
Leave the art alone and have a valid complaint about the real problems. This is an issue for me.
Well,
you separate. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, just consistency. I mean, it kind of blows my mind. I mean, reading the Scarlet Letter in school as a child, and then just seeing how that's reversed or weaponized by it's Robespierre, the oppressed become the oppressor, and it just seems. I understand maybe
exactly
the impulse for revenge and the justification for such a thing, but maybe I'm a little heartbroken. I was just hoping people would be a little more consistent with the message that I got at least out of it.
Yeah. No, that's really important. And I think we have to carry with us those messages from these texts that were life-changing. And I think about the modernists, from HD to Gertrude Stein. I mean, Gertrude Stein gets in trouble. Here she is, Jewish, lesbian, living abroad, going through World War II, which is happening, and trying to just save herself and her lover, her wife, and her art collection, and to do what she does. So she's friendly with one of the Vichy guys who's not a soldier, but he's, he works with, so it's tainted by that. Ezra Pound. I mean, you can't teach Ezra Pound because of his anti-Semitism. We knew about his anti-Semitism. I mean, we knew who these people were.
Celine,
yeah, exactly.
I got it yesterday. I got a book by Celine yesterday that just came out called War, which is hilarious, disgusting, and important. But, you can't say that his books, anti-Semitism aside, there's misogyny, there's all of this. You have to take the art for what the art is as well. I mean, you don't have to love the artist to love the art, and you don't have to love the art to love the artist. I mean, stop.
I know when people come to me, say like music fans who are into rock and roll, and they come with this kind of filter of what's allowed and what's not, I'm like, okay, let's use your filter. Supposedly Bon Jovi's a really cool guy, like very just. So is Bryan Adams. I mean, let's go down the pure ones. Are you kidding me? I mean,
I know. Yeah, exactly. Don't cast the first stone. No, but there are really some horrible. But I find that anybody who's really, it's very hard to find like one little redeeming thing. But there's something about the communication coming. I mean, just William Burroughs as a figure, and also always accused of murdering his wife and so on. People don't know the bigger picture, don't know his story, etc. And him being this kind of scientist of mind and curious about everything. You feel like he's lived past lives, whatever it is. He's this interesting conglomeration, but one of the most modern people I know, and very interested in war and all these things we talk about, and a thinker and a teacher in this way. But the way he's been, and it's a little different abroad and in Europe. I mean, there are whole studies of him, much more kind of critical scholarly work. But this kind of easy, facile thing, which we see in this country, I can't stand the way people talk about things. It's making me
Also,
crazy.
with Burroughs, also he had a radical lifestyle for at the time. I mean, not only the the cut up, the writing, the scientific mind, great performances, but his lifestyle was radical. I mean,
Yes.
as a lot of people had radical lifestyles at that period, but he really took it to the extreme, especially when you look at how he looked. He looks like a CIA agent, and we know the deviations he was engaged in, which is, to me, I loved the lifestyle. I mean, what the Beats taught me beyond their writing was their lifestyle was important to me. They were nomadic, which I'm nomadic.
Okay.
That they were going to live their life. That's it. And they did find other people that shared at least some of their philosophy, and they then formed a community, which is exactly what I took from your
They
generation.
also were going to Fellahin worlds. They were going to these parts on our planet that have
Yeah.
very evolved, interesting, sophisticated, layered, and wisdom traditions and so on, and these kinds of skills, mental skills, and investigating things that people. I mean, I can't believe the way the U.S. has treated Mexico all these years, having.
Oh, continues to.
What's that?
Continues to the way it
know.
continues to.
Well, and but people don't know that Mexico City has the most amount of museums of any city in the world. That
In the
fact
world,
alone,
exactly.
please start right there. What
Yeah.
they have
They have
actually
a
given to
woman
culture.
president, and they have to have half women in the Congress by law, and abortion is legal in a Catholic country. They also have incredible, crime syndicates and all the other stuff that goes along
A lot
with
of
it.
no GMOs. And the thing is, the problem with this country is they're so isolated and ignorant, and the schools becoming even worse, and then wanting to get rid of anything except for prayer in school. Back again, but that brings me to one of my heroes, Madeline Murray O'Hare, who at one point was the most hated woman in America, who got rid of prayer in school and then was found beheaded in the desert. I mean, she's like my spiritual wife, as Allen Ginsberg once said of you. I'm like, oh, the most hated woman in America till I came along. Well, that's only me being arrogant, of course, but
No, and we
okay.
have that's why this sense of archive and what we carry and what thou lovest well remains, which is a line out of Pound. But being able to continue the wisdom, we're not going to be here to always show up live and be able to construct and keep everything safe. But there's a way that we can't let all of this stuff get lost with a master narrative that is so insane.
Well, and the people that really need to hear it will find our voices, will find our music, will find us now and forever. A woman, many women, and that's what's important. And you too, you have an incredible archive that you've been collecting of all kinds
the
of things.
Naropa archive, the AV archive at Naropa, we're just working on finding a good home for that. Has to go to a place that'll be up on the technology, the next version of the digitization, et cetera. And there are a lot of places that are much hipper about how they can take care of that stuff. But
have you gone to Fales University at NYU? That they took my archives, and because they're digitizing is why I thought that was really good, because that's what's important. We want people who can't be personally at the performances. That's why I was always for YouTube. It's like people who can't be there should have still a right to see it.
When I heard Artaud's voice for the first time, when I heard Mayakovsky, Stein, there's just like a 20 minutes of Stein, I think, on one of those albums, but world, whatever, writing. And it's like transmission. And that from music and from all the, things that are already in our heads and our own body, speech, mind, vocalization, how we think, how we, let it come out. It was just so powerful. So that kind of where you feel like it's really waking you up, that sound imprinting. And in all traditions, spiritual traditions, you have to hear it first. And then it's then you can look at the text, if there is a text, or you can scribe it down, or you can save it in this way, memorize it, pass it on. And then there's an activity that it's like a performative for want of a better word, a performative way it comes into the world. So being able to keep those kinds of traditions going, which you've been so great at, and the
And
people.
you, I mean, and also,
Really
look, is it important? We have to use music, we have to use film, we have to, and then we have to often go back to the naked word, which to me is still extremely important, no matter what other elements or arts we add to it. It's coming down to our oral tradition, which
Right.
is to not be silent and to speak the things that some people may or may not think, to enlighten them or to let them know they're not alone in
Right.
feeling how they feel.
Right. No, I like to
And-
evoke this term in Thai poetics called T-bot. It's like striking the gong, you know, it strikes the gong and it opens up this whole thing, you know, into your own archive head. No, it's there's so much. I'm excited about what we've all done, what we've been doing, you know, even if it's
It's what it's. Look, we're still doing it. That to me is the most important thing. We're not going away. And we want, even in death, we won't go away. I want to be stuffed and sent on tour with a voice box, whatever. The archives remain.
Even in death, I know Stockhausen talked about how he couldn't wait to die because he was going to make even better music after he died.
Well, to quote Biggie Smalls, you can't kill me because I'm already dead. Or should I say, I'm more alive than most of the dead, and as I shall remain. But within our DNA, those that know, we have all of history's agonies. And from that, we make beauty from the destruction that is forever happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On our tombstone, we won't have one, Anne. You won't find my body.
No, I'm already,
Well, how about another poem from you?
yes, yes. I'm not sure what to do here.
Well, yeah, I mean, how do you choose from 60 books you've written? I don't know. It's like the I Ching.
Working on the new book is called Mesopotopia. I'm just working on it. It's for Penguin. It's coming after Trickster Feminism, which was really fun to do. That was, I felt it was very charged by the times, but also again layering back. And then yeah, a lot of other projects too right now. But I'll do this is after reading an account. I worked on an opera called, it was originally called Artaud and the Black Lodge, and then it was Black Lodge, music by David T. Little, Grammy nominated opera. It came out during COVID. Pretty interesting kind of group of people working on it.
Love Artaud. I mean,
this is an account of Artaud in Paris, and we got onto the, you know, the sense of the lodge, in which is Burroughs from Burroughs. The assignment for the opera was think about William Burroughs, Artaud, and David Lynch. So that was an assignment. Great assignment for a feminist. So this is, and this is a quote from Anais Nin. He made one feel the parched and burning throat, the pains, the fever, the fire in the guts. He was in agony. He was screaming. He was delirious. He was enacting his own death, his own crucifixion. So he's in a theater in Paris, and it's during the plague, you know, this plague in the 30s. And I'm not sure if I can see it well, but anyway, strange light in the lodge, repository of dark memories, spectral gesture. In 1933, Artaud performed an enactment of the theater and its plague at the Sorbonne. Body is martyr, an inscription is keeper, spectacle for the masses. His face was lean, the visionaries thrust to be incomprehensible, ensorcelled. The plague everywhere, death in the street, in garrets, back alleys, in carts of doom, in Aporia and Bardo, edging between life and death. His hands were trembling, eyes receding into the back of his head, looking inward, transported to an excruciating intensity. Artaud in the Black Lodge, cave of flickering shadows, sequester and death. What doctor in the house? That we can all see demon plague take hold, that our hearts break, or that fear turns us away, us too. Could it be every one of us? Anthropocene loses human control. How close we are to the dark anomalia, to the void, the abyss. Oh, generative cyclic flow and grind of meat wheel that was decomposing, losing breath and still singing. Artaud's apotheosis, palpable dark spirit babble in the theatrical light, center stage, shape-shifting show of demons, all the alchemical nuance as glass shatters. People in panic as he gasps, Artaud, Artaud, gasps, afraid of their own detritus and demise, jeering and hissing. La peste, they call it. La peste, they were calling out, la peste, as it sweeps the land, a prophecy, a crack in your mirror. La peste, la peste, la peste. So it was great to find this actual account of him himself doing this enactment of the I found it at the beginning of the COVID. It's like, okay, you know, the Buddhists were saying, pray for a cure, pray for a cure. I was kind of invoking Artaud to, you know, do this exorcism.
It's wonderful.
Did you like that the first vaccine shot in Britain, the guy's name was William Shakespeare?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Oh my, you know, plagues come and go. I mean, there's plagues all the time everywhere. And that just hit America as well as almost every place else at once. And it happens. It's just going to happen. We're fucking with the environment. We're fucking with the climate, fucking with the animals. Biodiversity is, you know, extinction, rebellion. Yes, please. It's just bound to happen. And the thing is, you know, I mean, the real plague and the real epidemic is the amount of pollution, microplastics. I just read a report that said air pollution causes more deaths than cancer, tuberculosis, HIV, maybe even more. That's what we're living in. Microplastics found in penises. Now, maybe if it was a macro plastic, it might be an improvement for the human race. I'm not sure. We're at the brink. We often are at the brink. And this is why we need poetry, music, and art. And speaking of art, and are you just curating a visual art exhibit of like Burroughs and Ginsberg and a few of your other pals?
Last year.
What's going on there? Tell me about that.
We got a bunch of things, something of Hunky in there, and Peter, and some of Alan's photos, and it was the kind of alternative art fair. It happens in Chelsea, I think, every year. So I was invited to curate, and got help with the people who work there, and people like Raymond Foy and Peter Hale, who works for the Ginsberg Archive. So collected, I was able to pick out things, you know, they gave me an array. And it was wonderful to see people coming in, so many young people wanting to hear the stories, know something about the artwork, the time periods. It traveled to Morocco with, you know, different artists there, Brian Geisen, of course, and so on. So it was a nice way to sort of tell a narrative, maybe that wasn't always the obvious one for me. And I enjoyed that a lot. And I've been working with the Giorno Systems folk.
I was just going to mention John Giorno. Yeah, I've done a few performances with him. He was very important. Again, another stubborn renegade.
Oh my God.
Did not stop.
He could be kind of cranky, difficult. His battles with Alan and jealousy over William.
He smoked more joints than anybody I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, that kind of was miraculous.
He survived cancer. He wrote, you know, he was incredibly serious Buddhist. He was the student of Dudjom Rinpoche. He helped the Tibetans get over here, helped continue what they need to do, worked with the AIDS stuff. I mean, very clear about that, had his, you know, very deliberate priorities. And so working with him on Dial-A-Pone and on these events at St. Mark's, you know, he once fed the whole church LSD punch on my birthday. That was really scary.
I do a lot of acid. Were you into acid when it was good?
Yeah. I mean, I got enough a few times, and it also, we're developing a program at Naropa, kind of along the lines of what Harvard's doing around therapies using psychedelics to help. So
important.
Finally, I mean, we knew it was curative. We knew it could help people. I mean, Alan got in trouble by talking about it as if everybody, you know, could change the world. And then we get these angry letters at Naropa. You told me to take acid, and I'm a lunatic. Help. So anyway.
Well, maybe before being a lunatic, maybe that's an improvement for some people. I'm not sure. I think, look, under the right circumstances at the right time, I do believe doing acid when I did as a teenager, when it was like acid, that it definitely expanded and opened you, and it did put you in touch with other realms that are inside all of us that most people just close down because they're too afraid to go there.
Yeah. No, empathy for me was the greatest thing. And in fact, my first trip was like a Buddhist teaching on the first thing where you're taking refuge and you're giving up your personal sort of identity and you're taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And you visualize everybody you've ever known, if you can hold it in your mind, all the family and their offspring and so and so and so, and your teachers, your everybody, the animals, the plants, in history, certain figures, but you also have to take along your worst enemy who's like right over your shoulder. So you have to do it for even the worst, tyrant or whatever. And you prostrate and you say, take refuge on behalf of all beings who were once my own parents, and so on. And in my vision on acid, it's like looking up at the sky with a whole bunch of people. I had this visualization. Okay, now what? We're all ready. What? So
what next?
It was so similar, and that's guided me a lot in this sense of the continuing, Indra's net and all the just holding in your consciousness daily.
Well, the connective tissue of how everything is related: plant, animal, human being, lover, those that hate. I mean, I have to say, other than very few people in the entirety of my existence in this life, there's been very few toxic people that I just said, okay, that's I've done what I can do and I can't do anymore. But as we are rabid collaborators, we remain friends with most of our collaborators because we come together in a sacred union of art and music and words, and that is the true community. And that's also what, when you expand your mind and you get rid of the infantile ego of greed and fear, then you open up, and that's where true life and love begin.
No, I'm so glad to be cheerful about that. I mean, impermanence can be very sexy in a way, letting go, becoming, dissolving into all that. And then
and if you can
conscious molecules. Yeah. And we've all had these experiences, which are just so beautiful, very grateful, counting blessings all the time.
And again, touching in to the other realms and dimensions of energy, electricity, thought, consciousness that go beyond most human understanding until you open up and allow it to flow out and to flow in. And I think, manifestation is a very important thing. People don't realize that, if you're cranky and you're disappointed in everything and everything's a downer, well, maybe because you're the downer. Because even though I might be speaking about heavy issues, at the end of the day, I'm very open, and that's my greatest success, is not being jaded after all of this.
I'm going to read a couple lines from, it's called Conversation with a Visionary Botanist. Green grass, you said, stepping back, human, thinking it's true in this life. Of course, green is where I come from. The way we rise from the sea. Mermaid, you mean? Mermaid is dream, mermaid, the plucky greenery. Mermaid, you said. I said our spectrum must be green, and you said fungal mat, mycorrhizal, and then the love affair of fungi and algae, and not lawn or loam, not necessary in many a place, but what they establish, symbiosis. Green from Old English, growing, because tidal life is growing, because plankton is grown, because green, because algae. You run on. Poetry is the pain of time. We walk by the ocean, deciding to do this for our love, our attraction, our desire. Green is slang for money, I say. Oh, not this, people out there riding a beast the color of sand. Where on the spectrum, I ask, we'll walk on the cold tundra, talk about nanometers, photosynthesis, because green and inherent will be present in your eye, ever absent eye, even eye of hiding, regret, sweat of an eye, saying about dryness. I ask how it might look, rasping. Why not always green? You say drought or doubt. Then I asking how urgent this is. You say we walk in a dark proverbial forest. We walk, we walk, we walk. A raven's cry that it be protozoa, that they be alive too in you, creature, earth and sky. What do you know of the rest of it? Fire is a first cause from your beastie breath. Imagine a death day that is drawn of cerebral work, not manicured to be cradle of green. The knots where suns were burning came to me. And this you said, as if musing the measure of precipice. What was the measure, nihilismus, a measure of sorrow that we come so close? Green, a test, green, an herbicide, the measure of urgency, the small planet succulent that would be hardiest. Don't do without me, world, color, color green, a peacock, the frog, and green memory of catastrophe, an intersection of you walking with your friend, lover, scientist, like the uninvited guest you welcome, interior space of all green, secret burial and mourning, art of social memory where graphs are housed, lists of contagion, the crisis I remembered yesterday came back, an insurrection, a siege, someone's you didn't know, they had agenda, they stalled your step and ours, you stopped walking and then.
Anne Waldman, so happy to know you, and also happy to be back to back with you on Kramer's new release of the Poe poems. We're back to back.
I know.
And can I want to, what I appreciate just hearing you read these works as a musician, because a lot of poets don't actually have a lot of variation in their tempos between poem to poem. It's usually have like a style, and it's one. And I've noticed just in those 3 readings, there's different tempi. You come in with a different tempo for each one, because each one has its own, like music, it's its own score in a weird way. And I really appreciate it because it really brings it much more alive for someone like me as a listener.
Great, thank you. I just did an interview with Jim Cohn, who's followed my work for years, but it has a discography of all the stuff I've done with music. I'll send it on to you. It was put out on by Simon, I think it's Simon Warner in the UK. He does a thing on beats and music, rock and roll and stuff. He's an interesting sort of critical thinker about it. But anyway, this is just recent. So I was happy, and I just went in with Devin and his wonderful friend who plays a double bass, Georgia from Sweden, and we did a whole album called Astral Omens, and they worked up these sounds. So that's from some of the Penguin manuscript is in there. And then Sayamaki, which Patty said was a great shield for the times, and has Laurie Anderson on it, and other really good people. So
well,
I'm very blessed.
So much, Anne.
Very blessed with these collaborations and working with others. I love it, as you know. And I hope I see you in New York. I'll be back in August, September.
Okay, I'm here for the first 2 weeks of August. If you're here, let's get together.
Okay, it might be a little late.
With Ambrose. Thank you so much. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, Anne Waldman. Undescribable, prolific, important, radical, and never stopping. I thank you for your existence, my friend.
Thank you. Same to you. Same to you.
Thank you.
Soon.
Nice to meet you too.
Yes, nice to meet you. Yes.
More.
Thank you, Anne.